17-year-old Jonathan Lewis. If you haven't heard about him yet, I'm not surprised.
Everybody, especially right-wing conservatives, really seem so persistent on flipping the narrative. Everybody wants to say, oh, if this was 15 white kids that beat a black kid to death, the media would be covering it. There would be marches in the street and riots.
Correct. But I don't want marches, and I definitely don't want riots. I don't even want these situations to be about race. My issue was the lack of media coverage and how people cannot seem to see how obviously different these situations are treated. But let's continue.
Let's talk about the fact that of these 15 kids who were responsible for murdering this kid, 8 of them are already in custody.
Easy W. But let me guess, is this your argument for why the media is not talking about this situation that much as opposed to situations where the races are reversed? Because a few months ago, there was a woman walking down the street with her boyfriend in downtown Chicago. And for the sake of this conversation, I'll mention that she was white. And out of nowhere, a group of teenagers, and for the sake of this conversation, I'll mention that they were primarily, if not all, black. They start brutally beating her down, dragging her to the ground, and then beating her down some more. All of this was being recorded by somebody who decided to caption the video, "Yay, we get active," as if this brought them joy. I can't even show y'all the footage because of how vulgar the attack was. And as for the literal mayor of Chicago, instead of condemning the actions of all of these teenagers who were terrorizing the streets of Chicago a few months ago, this was his statement. "It is not constructive to demonize youth who have otherwise been starved of opportunities in their own communities." There's an obvious bias. But I bet you haven't even heard about this situation. And you can't use the argument, well, that's because justice is already being served and justice moves faster for white women. Because to this day, there has still been 0 reports that anybody from that situation has been brought into custody. Where's the justice? This completely negates your previous argument. Let's continue.
8 of them are already in custody. Do we think that would be the case if the roles were reversed?
Yes, we've seen it happen. Also, I had to cut this video up and she's still talking way too slow.
Why do you think it is that when it is reversed, people feel they need to organize marches and protests and riot?
Because people have made race their entire identity. And people are going to want to fight back when they feel as though everything that they are or their identity is being attacked. People believe we're a monolith. People believe that when something happens to one of us, it's happening to all of us. It's also because when you tell people that their race is everything and that everything that negatively impacts their life can be attributed to their race or racism, this is going to naturally cause a racial uproar. Because as we know, genuine racism is one of the most shunned ideologies in our society today. And we should be condemning racism when it's actually racism, unlike what we've been seeing with these recent marches, protests, and riots. Let's continue.
Maybe, just maybe, there's no marches because the police are doing their job.
The police were doing their job in the shooting of Jacob Blake. Jacob Blake was incredibly wrong in this situation, and yet there were protests for weeks, and the media's coverage of this situation was through the roof, all by the basis that this was because of his race and police brutality. This all would inevitably lead to the very well-known Kenosha riots. This situation would be coming off the back end of the George Floyd situation, and this situation would give us the Kyle Rittenhouse situation, and so on and so on and so on. All stemming from this narrative of black man shot, white man was the shooter. Therefore, black man right, white man wrong. In a situation that had absolutely nothing to do with race in the first place. You don't need a telescope to see that there's an obvious touch of bias and deception in the way that our news is reported and the way that people react to these situations. And to act as if it's justifiable to treat these situations differently because they're inherently different is just straight up naive.